This is QTV News. I am Marietu Sidibe and thanks for joining us. First, the main local, international and sports news headlines. We hear about a revised code of conduct for the police force. In the month of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, there has been a training course for social workers. A two-day forum on financial management for CSOs gets underway. The Gambia's case against Myanmar represents the voice of the Islamic Ummah, so says our Justice Minister at the OIC meeting in Niger. In sports news, Gambia's young Scorpions get a hero's welcome on their return from Senegal. In international news, today is the International Day to End Slavery. The UK has become the first country in the world to sanction the use of a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, the local news in detail. The National Human Rights Commission and the Gambia Police Force on Wednesday validated a developed revised code of conduct for the police at the Human Rights Commission's office in Kotu. It seeks to promote professional policing. Aliou Cissé reports.
In July this year, the National Human Rights Commission, in collaboration with the Gambia Police Force, in working towards promoting professional policing, initiated a process to review and develop a code of conduct for the police and guidelines on policing public assemblies. Following completion of the process, officials of the National Human Rights Commission and senior command of the police on Wednesday gathered to validate the developed documents that will be the guiding tools for the police in their daily work. The police have been accused of human rights violations, considering the revelation at the ongoing TRRC and the Faraba Bantang incident, among others, where they are said to have overused their powers. Therefore, the document seeks to avert reoccurrences and also help build confidence and trust between the police and the public. Mahmoud Diop, Inspector General of Police, describes the document as important, adding the success indicates Gambia's march towards democracy and the importance the police attach to professionalism and respect for human rights.
I am therefore happy that the National Human Rights Commission has undertaken the very important project of helping revise and make available code of conduct for the Gambia Police Force. The code of conduct is concise and written in simple language, making it easy to read and comprehend. It contains 22 articles providing guidance on performance of duties, respect for human rights and the use of force, confidentiality, and many other codes that makes police work not only easy but also compliant with the rules of law and respect for the fundamental rights of persons.
Emmanuel Daniel Diouf, Chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, hopes the police will implement the code of conduct which will be applicable to every member of the force and incorporate the code of conduct into the police training curriculum and other in-service training curricula as may be necessary.
We're looking at the various aspects of the code of conduct, how, for example, even issues relating to arrest, the use of force, because they're mandated to apprehend, as I said, criminals, investigate. How do you go about these things in accordance with law so that the police will not be beholden to any one individual or institution? They must do their work, issues of integrity, issues of honesty. So, and this is what we want them to inculcate in, even at the level of the training school of the police and in their curriculum. So the code of conduct will be part and parcel of one of those critical documents and tools that the police will be using.
The National Human Rights Commission was established by the National Assembly, mandated to promote and protect human rights and to receive and investigate complaints of human rights violations. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cissé.
A training session for social workers on intensive tools linked to gender-based violence case management and referral pathways is currently underway. As Jenaba Sonko reports, that training is organized by the Ministry of Women, Children and Social Welfare through the UN Peace Building Fund.
The training is part of efforts to raise awareness and build capacities during the 16 days of activism against sexual and gender-based violence. The annual International 16 Days of Activism campaign kicks off on 25th November and runs until 10th December, which is Human Rights Day. It was started by activists at the inaugural Women's Global Leadership Institute in 1991 and continues to be coordinated each year by the Center for Women's Global Leadership. It is used as an organizing strategy by individuals and organizations around the world to call for the prevention and elimination of violence against women and girls.
Gender-based violence is a real crime. For the governments around the world, including Gambia, have denounced gender-based violence as a crime. So therefore, for them to do that, it is a serious matter. That's the reason why we should all be resilient. We should all fight together to make sure to eradicate gender-based violence in our midst, which is a very difficult task. And that's why every year, it's not only to remind people, but this is a daily thing.
According to the WHO, sexual and other forms of gender-based violence are increasingly reported in situations of complex emergencies such as the coronavirus pandemic. The term sexual and other forms of gender-based violence comprises not only rape and attempted rape, but also sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, forced early marriage, domestic violence, maternal rape, trafficking, and female genital mutilation.
With the COVID pandemic, violence against women, girls have reached pandemic proportions. Globally, you're talking about 243 million women and girls were abused by intermediate partners in the past year. Meanwhile, less than 40% of women who experience violence report back. As countries, Gambia is no exception, as we put measures of lockdown to stop the spread of coronavirus.
Social workers also play an important role in providing counseling, referral services and treatment of physical, mental and psychological health for women. It is therefore important to build their capacities continuously to effectively analyze and understand the reasons why violence is perpetrated against women and more.
The training is very important for social workers because as we are the voice of the voiceless, because we deal with vulnerable groups, especially women, children. So this training will give us the opportunity to able to advocate more so that people know what are the violations when it comes to gender-based.
In support of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres calls for global actions to increase awareness, galvanize advocacy efforts, and share knowledge and innovations. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jennifer Sonko.
The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, in collaboration with the UNDP, on Wednesday began a two-day public financial management forum for CSOs and media houses. The aim is to increase the awareness on government institutions' responses to COVID-19. Babukar C. reports.
The two-day gathering is under the theme, The Impact of COVID-19 on the Gambian Economy. The platform will also discuss the response taken by government institutions in the fight against the pandemic on our economy and the measures taken by the government to mitigate its challenges as the theme for the discussion. The Deputy Permanent Secretary for Projects and Programs at the Ministry of Finance, Madam Julde Sise, welcomed the participants, saying this year's forum centered on the current realities confronting the world.
At the heart of good governance lies effective public financial management, which is linked to multi-stakeholders engagement, accountability, effective checks and balances, and decentralization and local participation. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, this year's forum will be centered on the current realities that the world is confronted with the COVID-19 pandemic. This event will serve as a platform to discuss the responses taken by government institutions in the fight against COVID-19.
Representing the civil society organizations, Mr. Amadou Gaye welcomes the idea of coming together to discuss the impact of COVID-19, but was quick to stress that government made little or no effort to engage the CSOs when they could have played a great role in the fight against the pandemic.
This is a crisis involving the people, right? Every household up to the rural level, and government doesn't have the structures, to work in those areas. They only have the health system, and we all know how they are scattered across the country. They cannot play that role. The civil society organizations are much closer to the household communities and households whom they work with across the length and breadth of the country. So that was a very big omission, setting up a structure nationally to coordinate the COVID response without civil society being represented. And now they are calling civil society to be here, to talk.
Ansumana Sano, a participant, told me that the government made a mistake in the approach used during the COVID-19, especially the support of families, as according to him, the people with disabilities were marginalized.
Express our disappointment during the COVID time, especially from our central government, in the sense that we were left alone to fight it on our own as persons with disability. Because you can see in all the relief packages and all the mitigation processes that were laid down by the government, none of our issues have been captured. We are making a serious mistake in the sense that we take disability to be a family issue, and disability is not a family issue. So we should be captured on our own, not to be embedded in our families. It's altogether wrong.
Given the role of CSOs and the media in driving government's effort and the significant steps taken to sensitize the general public, the organizers believe it is important to meet these two significant stakeholders and to consider and critically review and come up with suggestions that will eventually improve the CSOs and media fraternity engagement with government for national development, with a special focus this year on the COVID-19 pandemic. Babu Karsi, QTV News.
We will go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, the news continues with some local and international news. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. In some more local news. At the recent 47th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the OIC in Niamey, Niger, the Gambia's Justice Minister Dauda A. Jallow said the case filed by the Gambia at the International Court of Justice against Myanmar represents the voice of the Islamic Ummah, as he calls for more support from the OIC. Aliou Cissé reports.
The Gambia is seeking justice at the International Court of Justice in The Hague against Myanmar for alleged acts of genocide perpetrated against the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. The Gambia's Attorney General and Justice Minister Dauda Jallow reminded the meeting of foreign ministers of OIC that the case was launched to awaken the conscience of the world in support of the rights of the Rohingya. According to the Ontario International Development Agency, nearly 24,000 Rohingya Muslims have been killed by Myanmar state forces since 2017. More than 34,000 Rohingya were also thrown into fires, while over 114,000 others were beaten, said the OIDA report entitled Forced Migration of Rohingya, The Untold Experience. The case represents the OIC's strong commitment to the Islamic teaching of brotherhood, justice and accountability for human rights violations, end of quote, he told the Council of Foreign Affairs Ministers. While outlining the success registers thus far in prosecuting the case with the support of a US-based international advocacy firm, the minister appealed to member states to urgently double up on final contribution to the legal fees of the case. The latest to extend voluntary support is Bangladesh, which hosts some 1.2 million Rohingya refugees. Its permanent representative to the OIC, Mohammed Javid Patwari, confirmed at the meeting that his country has disbursed $500,000 to the Gambia towards the legal battle. $5 million is reported to be the amount needed for this battle. Jallow said any support for the case should be communicated and coordinated with the Gambia in its capacity as applicant and chair of the OIC Ad Hoc Ministerial Committee on Accountability for the Human Rights Violations for the Rohingyas. He warned that uncoordinated actions may undermine the carefully planned and executed case management strategy that is required for a successful outcome. Since the ICJ unanimously granted the request for provisional measures against Myanmar in January 2020, the minister reported that the Gambia's legal team has since October 23, 2020, filed its case memorial with the ICJ after an intensive fact-gathering operation to obtain and process as much evidence of the genocide as possible. That includes 2 lawsuits against Twitter and Facebook in the United States for the revelation of the contents of online accounts controlled by members of the Rohingya military. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cissé.
We will take another short break and we continue with international and sports news when we return. Welcome back. In international news, today is International Day for the Abolition of Slavery, set aside by the United Nations to campaign against all forms of modern slavery. As Jaina Basonko reports, there is an ongoing campaign to persuade countries to ratify the ILO's Protocol on Forced Labor.
According to the International Labour Organization, more than 40 million people worldwide are victims of modern slavery, and 1 in 4 victims of modern slavery are children. Modern slavery refers to a situation of exploitation that a person cannot refuse or leave because of threats, violence, and/or abuse of power. Modern slavery is often used by perpetrators to cover up for illegal practices such as forced labor, forced marriage, and human trafficking. Countries across the world have a chance to join the campaign on the eradication of modern slavery through the ratification of the ILO's Protocol on Forced Labor. There is currently a campaign to persuade countries to ratify the Protocol on Forced Labor. The document is a legally binding treaty that requires governments to take new measures to tackle forced labor in all its forms. It works on 3 main levels: protection, prevention, and compensation. As an international treaty, countries must first ratify the protocol before it enters into force. The Gambia happens to be one of the countries yet to ratify this treaty, and the annual profits per victim of forced labor are far higher in developed economies like the Gambia and the European Union than any other place. Surprisingly, given its prevalence on the continent, only 11 of Africa's 54 countries have signed the protocol. There already exists a treaty on forced labor that most countries of the world have signed, which is the Forced Labor Convention of the 1930. But then, new forms of forced labor have emerged which are even more complex and difficult to tackle. The Protocol on Forced Labor complements the convention by adding new elements such as addressing root causes so that slavery can be eliminated once and for all. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jaina Basonko.
The UK on Wednesday became the first country in the world to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine for use. It is expected to be rolled out from next week, paving the way for mass vaccination.
According to a statement from the UK government, they, I quote, have today accepted the recommendation from the Independent Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, to approve Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine for use, quote concludes. The first 800,000 doses of the vaccine will be available in the UK from next week, Health Secretary Matt Hancock said, adding the doses will be rolled out as quickly as they can, and then millions to follow throughout December, but the bulk of the rollout will be next year. He added, I quote, 2020 has been awful and 2021 is going to be better. I am confident now with the news today that from spring, from Easter onwards, things are going to be better and we are going to have a summer next year that everybody can enjoy, quote conclude. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has hailed the development as fantastic news, adding, I quote, "It is the protection of vaccines that will ultimately allow us to reclaim our lives and get the economy moving again," quote conclude. The elderly and people who are clinically and extremely vulnerable will be the first in line to receive the vaccine, and care home residents, health and care staff to follow. US-based Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech and US biotech firm Moderna have reported preliminary findings of more than 90% effectiveness and unexpectedly high rate in trials of their vaccines. Pfizer said the UK's emergency use authorization marks an historic moment in the fight against COVID-19. CEO Albert Bourla said, I quote, "This authorization is the goal we have been working towards since we first declared that science will win, and we applaud the MHRA for their ability to conduct a careful assessment and take timely action to help protect the people of the UK," quote conclude. A concern raised is that Pfizer's vaccine must be stored and shipped at ultra-cold temperatures of around -70 degrees Celsius, adding to the challenge of distributing the vaccine around the world. The company also says it has developed shipping containers that use dry ice to keep the vaccine cold. GPS-enabled sensors will allow the company to track each shipment and ensure they stay cool, it added. The vaccine will be non-compulsory and there will be 3 ways of vaccinating people across the UK. That includes hospitals, vaccination centres and communities. According to official figures, the UK is home to Europe's deadliest outbreak of the virus, with more than 1.6 million cases of the novel coronavirus having been recorded since the pandemic began in late 2019. And more than 59,000 people have died with the virus. The UK has already ordered 40 million doses of the free jab, enough to vaccinate 20 million people. For QTV News, Lolly M. Kamara.
In sports news, the Gambia Under-20 junior national team returned home on Tuesday to a hero's welcome after triumphing in Dakar at the just concluded WAFU Zone A Under-20 Championship. The Scorpions defeated host nation Senegal to hand coach Matar Mbodj his second WAFU trophy in 2 years. Babakar C reports.
Matar Mbodj and his charges arrived home to an exuberant and welcome on Tuesday as fans crowded roadsides to greet the parading players in their boss. The champions travelled via Farafenni, where soldiers at the infantry battalion cheered them across the Senegambia Bridge to Soma. The convoy then took the South Bank Road, passing waving bystanders along the way to Mandinaba, where the parade got into high gear. More crowds awaited from the Fonyis and Brikama, where the convoy took a slow pace towards Westfield and then the capital city and ended at the GFF house. Welcoming the team at the football house, GFF Force Vice President Bakari Jammeh challenged the boys to continue working hard to be professional football players.
We pray that all of you turn professional, and this is your opportunity for it to happen. We as a federation, Mr. President, under your leadership, are grateful to everybody who has contributed in one way or the other. The people of the Gambia have shown that they believed in the GFF and the GFF's work. This is why we have chosen a theme that can do it, and they have shown it. Coach Matar Mbodj, if we could recall, is winning this trophy for the second time.
Sekou K. Sanyang, the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, on behalf of his ministry and the government, congratulated the boys for their performance and assured them of the government's support.
And greetings from the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports, and by extension from His Excellency Adama Barrow, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, and his entire cabinet team are fully aware of you people breaking one of the biggest psychological barriers that this country has been enduring, including my own humble self, since the Zone 2 tournament, which I personally witnessed We got defeated and defeated upon several times. So this is not just the breaking of the psychological barrier, but a giant step indeed for the improvement of football and for enhancement and entrenchment, as well as inculcation of football into the mindset of our youngsters. And we will endeavor to make sure that this stands and stay. We will make sure that this stands and stay. Cabinet is aware, the government is aware. We will fully support you to any level.
The president of the Gambia Football Federation, Lamin Kababajo, said he was not surprised seeing the Baby Scorpions coming back despite a shocking defeat in the opening game of the tournament.
In an opening match against a particular team, you are defeated 5-1, and then recovering in the next matches, and then meeting the same team at the finals and defeating them. Really, I think is more than a miracle. But what that shows is the determination and the sense of purpose that were inculcated into the players, and which they consumed. This was inculcated into them by the head coach and the team of technicians, plus the team of administrators, from the head of delegation to the team manager, who are all veteran, sports administrators and coaches in their own rights, and assisted by another doyen of sports administration, Mr. Ibu Seka of the National Sports Council. So we are not surprised when we saw the comeback in the match against Sierra Leone and repeated with Guinea, and then, what do we say, bomb, last card, arrest.
On behalf of the team and the delegation, head coach Matar Mbouch praised his players for the heroic performance, but was quick to call on the football authorities to do better in terms of helping the team with its preparations.
When you consider that it's the host country, it's not any host country, it's Senegal. The last 3 U20 AFCON finals, they've gone there. This team that we beat in the final. Mali, they're the current champions. And we have the strongest zone in the whole of Africa in terms of wins, appearances, along with West Africa. So this triumph, I think, you set the next challenge is to go to the U20 AFCON. Now we want to challenge you as well to step up in terms of the support, because we have done what we can with what we have had, but it can still be better.
The latest triumph in Senegal is the second trophy for coach Matar Mbouch in 3 years, the first being 2 years ago in Liberia. Babukar Sy, QTV News.
Before we end this bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. We hear about a revised code of conduct for the police force. In the month of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, there's been a training course for social workers. A 2-day forum on financial management for CSOs gets underway. The Gambia's case against Myanmar represents the voice of the Islamic Ummah, so says our Justice Minister at the OIC meeting in Niger. In sports news, Gambia's young Scorpions get a hero's welcome on their return from Senegal. In international news, today is the International Day to End Slavery. The UK has become the first country in the world to sanction the use of a COVID-19 vaccine. That's all we have for you in this bulletin. Join us at 10 for another bulletin. Thank you for watching.